I'm Alison from Bag Ladybird Learn to Sew. Today I am going to be showing you how to sew a curved seam on your sewing machine. So without further ado. Okay, so just showing you how the machine is set up. We are on a regular straight stitch on the stitch selector. Got the stitch length for normal sewing would normally be 2.5. I'm going to reduce it down for a curve just down to 2. Just makes it easier to negotiate your way around a curved seam. The needle position is on 5, which is the central position under the presser foot. And I have got my machine threaded up in a contrasting thread so you can see it more easily. Okay, so I've cut the fabric, so I've got 2 different types of curves to show you. An outside curve and an inside curve. So the inside curve could be something like attaching a facing to an armhole or a neckline, and the outside curve could be something like a Peter Pan collar or a neckline, a pocket bag, something like that. So first of all, what I'm going to do is line the first edge up with the 5/8 seam allowance. So that needs to be lined up level with where your needle is. So you're looking at where the 5/8 is in line with your needle. Doesn't matter what's happening down here, doesn't matter what's happening behind. The only bit that matters is that you're keeping level with your seam allowance guide at the needle level. Okay, so I'm going to now reverse back to the beginning. So because we're on a shorter stitch length, what happens is we're taking shorter steps. So it makes it easier to turn around the curve. So as we come along here, I'm still just keeping my eye level with the needle, and I'm just moving my hands back in line with the front of the machine. So as we're turning the curve, your hands are gently moving that way towards the right. So just slowly keep your machine speed under control. Here you can see the fabric starting to get a little bit twisted. I'm just going to lift the presser foot up to release that, and then just continue. And you can see here we're not lined up with the 5/8 line, but we are lined up with it here level with the needle. So just bringing your hands back around and keeping that lined up, and a few stitches in reverse at the end. Lift your needle, lift your presser foot, and cut your thread tails short. Because you've back tacked, your stitches are locked and secure. Okay, so I'll show you now the sewing technique for the inside curve. So here we're lining it up again with the 5/8 seam allowance line on the base of the machine. Level with the needle is where the starting edge is going to be. Press a foot down, needle down, and reverse that back to the beginning. Now we're going to come forward, and the hands are going to do the opposite with this opposite shaped curve. So we're now moving our hands towards the left, and just keeping your eye level with the needle that your seam allowance is still lined up. And then you come into the end. This is relatively straight. A few stitches in reverse, and then just lift your needle, lift your presser foot, pull it out and cut your threads. And just remember to turn your stitch length back to 2.5 for your regular stitching. But in doing the 2 stitch length for your curve, you can see that we have nicely negotiated that curve. So now we've done this seam, what your instructions will more than likely tell you to do is to trim and clip your seam allowance. So this is a really crucial step to making sure that your curves lay flat and even. So if you were to try and turn this seam allowance, turn this the right way round without trimming and clipping your seam allowance, what happens is, because this length here is shorter than this bit here, it would just buckle and not sit flat because there's not enough space for that seam to open out. So if you trim your seam allowance down to approximately half, and then you want to go in and just clip your seam allowance like so. So you don't need to create V shapes, you are just snipping in, and you need to be quite brave with this. You need to go up to your stitch line. You don't want to cut through your stitch line, but if you go up to the stitch line, it will allow that seam then to open up when we turn it through and sit open and flat how you would like that to sit. The less curved the curve, the less steep the curve, you can space out your little snips further. The closer together the curve, the more closer they need to be. So that was your inside curve. If you're looking at the outside curve here, again, if you try to turn this one through as it is, what you get is a not very nice curve sitting there. You want to have a really lovely edge, particularly if that's going to be on a collar on your centre front. So we're trimming this down to approximately half again, just reducing the bulk here. And then with an outside curve, what you need to do is clip yourself little V shapes. And what that does is it allows, when this folds to the inside, it allows that to sit in that space. Whereas if you didn't clip the V's out, you would have too much fabric there and it wouldn't sit flat, it wouldn't sit nice. So again, the more curved your seam, the closer together your little triangles need to be to allow enough space for that seam. So clip in all the way around. As your curve gets less curved, you can space your little clips out, and the clips want to go all the way to the stitch line. Okay, so we're going to do the outside curve first, so this one. So what you want to do is open out your two layers. I'm using a tailor's ham just to try and help me get in there. You want to separate the seam like so. And pressing curved seams is really crucial to getting a good finish. So we're going to put this over the end of the tailor's ham as much as we can. In fact, it doesn't have a suitable curve. This is too curved for my tailor's ham. So we're just going to press. Getting the tip of the iron in on these little bits of the seam to press them as flat as possible. So we're pressing. Just doing it, touching really quickly there, so that the heat doesn't really penetrate through to my hand. But if you are going to do that, be really careful. You're better to have a tailor's ham. But if like this you can't get in, then you just press in those gently, gently, so that they would then sit like so. Once you've done that and pressed it open, you're then turning it through to the right side. And what you should find is that this sits nice and even with the stitches right on the edge. Like so. So you should have a lovely, smooth curve. So then on this one we can use the tailor's ham, we can use that to get in. Spread this open. You'll be able to see a bit better what I'm doing here. A little bit of steam. And the pressing of your seams is really crucial to get a nice professional finish. If you don't press your seams, they won't sit flat. So now you've done that, you're then pressing it this way round to sit. Like so. And again, we've got a really smooth, neat curve, not got any corners or edges to it, it's just beautiful and smooth. And that's a combination of the sewing, the clipping and the pressing. You need all three parts to get your curves to sit beautiful and smooth. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel for more great Learn to Sew videos that will help make you a better dressmaker.